Hi, I'm State Representative Mark Gillen, and this is Legislative Report. As you can see, we're on the banks of the Wyomissing Creek in Mohnton Borough. A little bit of an unusual setting for a legislative report, but there's a historical nexus. On the banks of this creek were tens of thousands of gun barrels that were manufactured during the industrial heyday of the gun makers of the Wyomissing Creek from 1776 to 1900. Of course, industry required power, but in 1776, that power was produced by water. There was a series of impoundments on the Wyomissing Creek here to produce that power. As a matter of fact, as we look off into the background, that is the Mohnton Memorial Park. This park was underwater until 1920. In 1920, the dam burst, and of course, this became dry land over time. One of the industries of the Wyomissing Valley that we're going to visit today is the Hornberger Wagon Works from 1873. It's currently owned by Tom Chappell, and he's going to give us a little bit of a historical backdrop of that wagon works, which is adjacent to the Mohnton Memorial Park right here on East Wyomissing Avenue in Mohnton Borough. I'm State Representative Gillen with Tom Chappell in his historic Hornberger Wheelwright Wagon Works, Carriage House, etc. Right. The story that you told me many years ago here has never left me. It's riveting, it's powerful, it has historical aspects that I think are fascinating for any individual at any age and stage of life. You came to look at this building. Tell us a little bit about your visit to a building which was for sale in somewhat dilapidated condition and what you discovered inside of the building.
Well, I had known of the building, Mohnton being my hometown when I was a young man and going to Governor Mifflin. But I had rented the Butler building for a few years from the Palms. And I noted one day when I came in that there was a sign out front and a kind of a handwritten thing in the window that the building was for sale, not the business. And I was curious, so I came inside, and as I looked around in this particular area, this was all an open area, but there was a wall here that protruded. And I thought it rather odd, and I said, may I make a hole in the wall? And they...
You haven't bought the building yet, you're still looking.
No, but I knew the Palms, and they said, well, sure, but what? And I said, there's something back there when I was there. So I made a hole in the wall, put my flashlight in, and lo and behold, there was a Lancaster 40 Forge blower, Lancaster 400 actually. And I caught a glimpse of the brickwork, and I thought, Lord have mercy, there is something historic about this. So I thanked them. I said, I will repair the wall. I said, I'm going to the courthouse. And that day, I went to the courthouse. I researched the deed of 19 changes and found out it was the Cyrus Hornberger Wheelwright and Carriage Shop in 1873 construction. And that's all I had to know. I came back, hopefully, fingers crossed, made them an offer, and they took it. And the rest is history. I began the restoration and spent innumerable years, probably almost 3.5, 4 years, and a lot of sweat equity and dollars, and brought it to its state today, which of course now, this is the results.
For many years, I was your neighbor.
Correct.
In fact, the next residence on East Wyomissing Avenue until we outgrew it, 5 children later.
Right.
And I watched this building progress through the years. And I was always very pleased with what you were doing here. And your knowledge and your appetite for history in this area. And I think you've improved our community as a consequence of what you've done here.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah, we have a gem. Now, for the uninitiated, and I include myself amongst that group, you've got a blower back there. What sort of temperature is needed to produce the metallurgical changes in order to fashion?
Well, Mark, and believe it or not, the blower is still hooked up to the toyer. If you turn the crank, the air still comes through the toyer. For blacksmithing, to get the charcoal hot enough to get a white hot iron, it would be somewhere upwards of 1,200 degrees. There's a yellow stage, there's a red stage, and then there's a pure white, which is where the horseshoes were done. And this is a very unusual building in the fact that as a carriage shop, it's 3 stories. It's a bank-type barn or bank-type building, but the carriages were built on the top floor. Very unusual. The stables were downstairs, so the blacksmith was street level. Therefore, they would use the elevator to bring the horses up and shoe the horses right here, and they would bring the carriages and sleighs down and iron the carriages right here and then take them down and out the back. So the layout, it must have been Cyrus's design, obviously, but very unusual, probably the only one in the state of Pennsylvania like this. The Gruber Wagon Works built the large farm wagons, hay flats, things of that nature, and bobsled sleighs, where this gentleman and his associates, the carriage maker, the wheelwright, and the blacksmith, were strictly a small, I think the largest product would have been maybe a Surrey, a 4-passenger Surrey. Most of them were small carriages like the one on the roof, which happens to be the doctor's buggy from Shoemakersville, Pennsylvania, which we restored, built the cupola on the back down in the yard, and had the folks come in with a crane, and Dickinson crane, and they were very kind enough to lift it on the roof for us. The family was so happy that when we go upstairs, I can show I have the original doctor's bag.
Speaking of happy families, my family was out watching this whole operation.
Oh, that's right.
To the top of the building. Right. How many tools does it take to run a shop like this? I'm looking at dozens and dozens.
Well, the selection of hammers, a blacksmith couldn't have enough various hammers. This anvil happens to be a British anvil, and this is sitting on top of a huge tree, which the trunk goes all the way through the floor, down to the stables and into the ground. That tree was set there, and we don't know what it was. Unfortunately, that was cut off when they built the wall and put the tub there, so we added to it with a piece of hickory, and we suspect that it's either oak or chestnut. And of course, the wheelwright tools are up here with the measurement of the wheels. These are all handmade tools that I've collected over the years, the tongs, and this was the charcoal pit that is lit down there. And it's as authentic with every item that a blacksmith would have used, from a chest drill to a hand drill, his lighting, and so forth and so on. So we just tried to keep it. And of course, this all now will become, whoever purchases the building in the future, if this will remain, that is in the deal. They must keep it exactly the way it is. If they want to change one thing, the Historical Society will remove the whole operation, the tools, everything I've donated and belong to them. With the Historical Society being possibly no longer active or something happens, it goes to the Borough of Mohnton.
Now, as we begin to wrap up in this area, I keep looking at this anvil, and I suspect it's not something the average person is going to carry around. What kind of weight do we have there?
That you're looking at close to probably 220 pounds. That's a British-made anvil, which they made some of the finest anvils. That has a beautiful ring to it, and you know, it has all of the various accessories that to shape and so forth and so on. So we had several anvils at the time, and we also had a 40 forge, which I donated to the Lancaster County Historical Museum. I gave it to them.
As I was coming in the building, you mentioned some of the oak that this structure was put together with was actually harvested adjacent to the building.
Yeah, the whole building is native oak that was harvested right out here where the park is. And then, of course, I concentrated on uncovering every tree and every beam in there. The telephone is typical of what may have been here, because you can see on the picture, Harry Knoll, it states on his truck, telephone. And I don't know when the first phone came into Mohnton, but of course this is all hooked up. This little addition just happened to ring the bell for the elevator. It was my thing. And this works. And of course, Harry Knoll, who at the time was the blacksmith, who lived in the house right across the street, and his name appears on the building. He was the first blacksmith that was hired when the building was built, and ultimately wound up with the business and did repair service up until his retirement in the early 40s during the war.
When was this picture taken here with the
We
Knoll
think,
name?
we think that these pictures are probably parallel. This was a 1915 to a 1916 truck, and obviously sold here in Mohnton by the Ford dealer. And it's pretty well battered, but I think somewhere in the early 20s. The pocket doors slid open. We are standing in the opposite end of the building of where the door originally was. That was changed, we suspect, by either Harry Knoll or possibly the fuel oil dealer after that. This was purchased by Niles Stanbaugh, the tractor dealer, back in 44 up till 49. And then the fuel oil dealer took over.
When we originally opened, we were at the Wyomissing Creek where the trolley ran across. Are we looking at the trolley line in this picture?
That's correct. It
Okay.
passed behind the building, and this garage is the neighbor's garage, still exists. That was the trolley stop. And this is typical of some of the things that were manufactured here by the Knolls, the farm equipment.
So we're only about 10, 15 yards from where the trolley ran behind the building.
Correct.
And for much of this building's life, Valmont Lake was immediately behind what is the Moat Memorial Park was a lake.
Well, Josephus, the son of Cyrus, built the lake in the early, it was 04, 06, somewhere in there. He wanted to replicate Carsonia Park. He got as far as the lake and the fancy house, the glass house at the end, which is his.
Right.
And then things happened. He was a little bit, how shall we say, he was known to be a counterfeiter.
Oh.
He was a clothier on Penn Street. And we understand that the federal agents came in and drained the lake a few times looking for the plates of his machines and never found them. And this is all rumor, but fairly common and supported.
A lot going on in our moat here that we didn't know about. Well, there was 22 impoundments, as I read. Cole's Mill down to Wyomissing wasn't just in the borough of Mohnton.
Tremendous.
This was the heart of it. So that's what powered the industries, the impoundments, and turned the wheels
Industries
and the
of
lathes.
the Wyomissing Creek, and Cyrus Hornberger, being a brilliant engineer, was responsible for many of the designs of those lakes. And of course, between Valmont and all of the dams, thus came the name of the Mohnton Navy Yard.
The legend.
The legend. Right.
And we had a restaurant down the street, the Mohnton Navy Yard.
That's correct.
No longer open.
And here are the skates that the girls used. You can see them skating on the pond when it was, this is the skates they used here when they were ice skating and so forth and so on. And the trolley is running here, and here's the trolley up at the other end. You see, the lake is down here. This is coming across the trestle, and that picture on the wall shows clearly the carriage shop with the trolley in it and the lake.
So,
that.
why don't you point the carriage shop out in this picture here?
Okay. Yeah. Here's the carriage shop, right there. And it says wire fencing on the carriage shop. This is Lake Valmont, and there is the trolley passing across the trestle here, and then making its turn to go.
By the way, Tom, you may not realize there's a historical site right across from the Holy Gully Hotel.
Correct.
But it wasn't built until 1938.
It was your house? Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, every part
And
of this
course.
building tells a story. And we can look at some other elements in just a moment, but let's look down at the floor and tell us what we have there.
When we leveled everything out in order to accommodate a commercial building, we had to make a decision, and I just hated to cover up everything, so I made a decision to leave at least a mirror. And there you're looking at the original beam floor that was all the carriages over the years and everything that was brought in and out of here.
A lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of detail into this building. What's this covered with here?
Half-inch tempered glass.
All right, so it's not going anywhere.
No, you can dance on that.
And this is oak underneath of it?
That is oak. Yes, the whole building is solid oak. The beams downstairs, all the support beams. In the back office, I have uncovered the trees and so forth. It's all native oak, felled right back here. And I suppose they must have aged it somehow, but we do get the funny part. We do get movement in this building. We can plaster our walls in the back offices, and a year later we'll have a fine crack, and because the building moves. It's,
Where did you come up with these ice skates? I see them skating right behind this building here near the hotel that we've called the Hully Gully,
Hully
at
Gully,
least
yeah.
more contemporary. Where did you obtain these skates?
Oh, I think I found them up at Renninger's Antique Emporium at one time. I recognized them as ladies' skates, typical of the picture, and I thought I just had to have those. And of course, upstairs, I have the doctor's bag presented to us by the family of the carriage we restored for the cupola. So there's just little touches and so forth that have been kind of dear to my heart. And there's a lot of sweat equity here, a lot of passion put into it, and
A lot of heart.
a lot of heart. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Before we go up and take a look at the elevator, and it has its own story to tell, you're working on another project nearby, one-room schoolhouse.
I am. I'm restoring the 1883 Sheriff Schoolhouse, stone schoolhouse.
Where does this passion come from, Tom? This has obviously been around a long time in you.
All my life, antiques. My dad and my stepmother were antique lovers down in the Ole Valley and so forth. And I guess it just, maybe I inherited it, I don't know. But I just have a passion for old things, and I am a wood specialist. I actually practiced, taught, and so forth the restoration of impossibly rotted wood. We restored the rail stations for SEPTA down in Philadelphia at Queen Lane and Wissahickon Avenue, and we did some work for the Germantown station. We've done a couple of small schools, all sorts of farmhouses, especially in stone buildings when the windows, and chestnut was very popular then, but when the windows were set as the construction took place, they became structural and permanent parts, so you can't just remove them. So if you're going to be fixed, we had to come up with a method to actually fix them with what we call Dutchman repairs and things in place. And a company in Allentown, Pennsylvania, PC Products, produces the fabulous product that allows us to come up with this. And then over a period of years, I developed a process for restoring logs of a log home, and of which they gave me accolades for. And so I just passed this along, and I'm now working with a Mennonite stonemason, and I can't resist at my age. I'm still, when he comes up with a project with his woodwork, I go to David and we do woodwork.
So at 49, you're still doing it?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
How about, you bet.
Before we step up, it's incited me, the comments you just made about this building. You saw something somewhere in this building and it represented a significant challenge to you. What was it about this building when you took on the restoration, the entire project?
Well, it was just the fact that the condition that the building was in, I felt it was talking to me. I came in here and I saw this forge, and then I went upstairs and saw pieces and parts to an elevator, and I thought, I just got to do it. I just have to do it. It was just something, so.
You knew how huge it was going to be from the beginning?
Well, I don't know about that, but I took it on, and I had an associate that I hired and brought him in to help me, and he's running, I gave up my business to him a few years ago. He's now running the restoration business. So through that hiring, and I trained him. He was very handy and very good, but I trained him in the historic aspects of restoration. He was a perfectionist like myself, but when you're restoring historic structures, you don't go for perfection, you go for authenticity. So you want to leave some grains, you want to leave some broken pieces,
Right.
So especially if you're going for the gold, you can't overdo it. And that's something that a person who is a perfectionist, like the Amish and the Mennonite, you got to tell them, hey, I want it to look like it looked back in 1883 or something of that nature.
Right. Well, certainly the forge speaks loudly. Why don't you lead us to the elevator, and it
Sure.
has its own story to tell in this building.
All right, fine.
Tom, as your friend and neighbor, there's two things that you consistently talk about when I hear you speak on this building. One is the forge downstairs, the other is the elevator.
Right.
Can you tell us the story?
Yeah, the elevator, it's a very unusual building, and the fact that they designed this as early as 1873 around the elevator. And as a comparison, Gruber only added their elevator in 1905. Prior to that, they had to ramp things up to the second floor.
The Gruber Wagon Works.
Gruber Wagon Works. And when we discovered the building and found the remnants of this elevator, the bull wheels and so forth, and then we had to scrounge for other parts and rebuild everything, we found, and now it's operational, at least we can lift it about 4 or 5 feet where it is at the moment, and it's just probably one of the oldest operational carriage elevators in the United States.
You showed me a picture, and it was, I believe, 1905.
1905 of Gruber, and it's identical. So we feel that Frank Gruber probably visited with Cyrus, and being impressed, he built the same, ordered and built the same elevator, with the exception of the platform being much larger, because Gruber built much larger vehicles. This wagon here is typical. This was built here over 100 years ago, and this was a wagon that Cyrus had a contract for through his brother, who worked for the Philadelphia and Reading, and they built these probably by the 50s or 100s for all the stations along the P&R for the porters to remove and take freight to the engine trains. And this is very interesting. I acquired this through a dear friend of mine, now deceased, and he was a contractor here in Mohnton, and he was part of the party that rode this thing back in the early days, the 30s, and it was built in 1927 with a Chevrolet truck steering mechanism, and Harry Null did the iron work on it. But the funny story was that a lot passed along to me that they would come down Walnut Street on the winter time and build up a tremendous head of speed. And they gave a young fellow a couple of candy bars if he would stand and watch, because the trolley came by right out here, and make sure to note them in case there was a problem, and the trolley was imminently going to be occupying the same space at the same time. They came smoking down here one day, and the kid was gone, and they were at speed and way too fast to slow down, so as they barreled across the tracks, the ding, ding, ding was on about 15 feet from them, and the story was that they chased the kid all the way through Penwyn to try to catch him. That was a near disaster.
And for the uninitiated on Walnut Street, there's a lot of places around here you don't want to ride your bicycle up. I've done it on several occasions. Yep. It's a workout.
It's a workout.
It is extraordinarily steep.
This thing built ahead of speed. But this represents right here the way the building looked. This was all open. This was the manufacturing area, this room. And of course, the dormer was not added. The dormer, this was built with that dormer to accommodate the elevator, which makes it a very unusual design. Most of your wagon shops, the wagons were made right on ground floor, or maybe one floor up on a bank barn, which would have had a ground level loading. Here we are 1 story above the street, so the elevator was a necessity.
And this system was designed such that one individual, and utilizing counterweights, one of which we have back here.
Right.
Okay, one individual could actually control this whole system.
You could pull this wheel right here, right now, and we could raise this elevator if we wished, or you could put 2 horses on it, because the ratio allowed the worker, who had some strength, of course, to pull the horses up from the stable area to be shoed down on the first floor at the blacksmith, and it enabled the carriages to go down and be ironed.
So you could have 2 horses on this freight elevator.
No problem.
And it hands no difficulty.
One guy could, yep.
So wagons, horses, equipment going up and down in this building.
Yes.
At its heyday, how many individuals would you expect to find working in the building?
We don't know that, but I would assume, I mean, with the wheelwright and the carriage maker and so forth, they probably employed a painter. We know who the painter was and actually have access to his striping box. There might have been 4 or 5 employees. Probably the blacksmith had an assistant. The carriage maker would have certainly had 1 or 2 people working up here. And of course, the carriage on the roof is exemplary of what was made here. It was not built here. We don't know. I think it's a Studebaker, but we're not sure. And I do have the doctor's bag, like I said. It's beautiful.
In a couple minutes, we're going to go out to that carriage sitting on top of the building. But when you look back at all that you've uncovered here and all the substantive investment of time and energy,
sweat equity,
How many people from the community get to enjoy this like I have? I was your near neighbor. How much appreciation
Well,
is there for what's going on?
we've taken scout troops and everything through on occasion, but there's a lot of people that have no idea. But that doesn't matter. This has been a personal challenge for me and a very rewarding one. So
I appreciate you. Let's go outside and take a look at the carriage that you had installed on the roof of this building.
Okay.
Tom, I've got a very vivid memory. I believe it was about 9 years ago. There was a number of people outside the building. There was a crane set up, and you were hauling your cupola with the carriage inside of it to the top of the building for installation. Why don't you pick the story up from there?
Well, we decided when we got the carriage, the doctor's carriage from Shoemakersville, we restored it and needed a place of honor, and I took a design from an old carriage house down in Gibraltar, expanded on that design, built it right here on the lot, put the carriage in it, locked it up. Dickinson Crane came in and gratuitously, wonderful people, they mounted it for us. They took it up and we fastened it, and it's been there ever since. At nighttime, the lights light up on the carriage and so forth.
So we're going to have to do a nighttime shoot here because obviously it's spectacular in the evening.
The carriage is exemplary of what was built here. It was not, we suspect it may be a Studebaker, but it's not. It was not a Hornberger, a doctor's buggy, but it's perfectly exemplary of what was built here.
And the roof itself, is that copper I'm seeing up there?
Yes, we clad the roofs in copper as the pent roofs, and also before copper went crazy.
Yeah, right. And you've got some historical lightning rods there as well.
We do, and that is a perfectly active and insurance happy setup. It's grounded.
Yeah, and this is a nice visual because you hear about bank barns, and this is built into the hillside.
That is built into the hillside as a bank bar. It's a very unusual design for a carriage shop. We don't know of any others where the carriages are actually made on the top floor like that.
I'm guessing that we are standing very close to where the trolley track ran through here.
We are actually standing on where the trolley track ran right up through here.
Yep. And that ended in the early 50s.
54 was the last trolley. Yep.
You've got a piece downstairs which we're not going to have time to spend a lot of conversation about, but it's a sleigh, and they did make sleighs here as well as carriages and wagons.
They made sleighs and probably like a buckboard or a small farm wagon, maybe a doctor's buggies, a landau, a little 4-passenger landau, things of that nature. Strictly small, personal, family type vehicles. Yeah.
Tom, I've thoroughly enjoyed this visit.
Okay,
and
thanks, Mark.
I'm very proud of the outstanding work that you're doing right here in the middle of the community. I've had many tours of the building. I learned something different every time you and I have a conversation inside of the building. So we appreciate you being with us.
I'm glad someone does. Okay, thank you.
I'm State Representative Mark Gillen, and that's all the time that we have for Legislative Report. If there's any state-related issues that we can help you with, please feel free to call us at 610-775-5130.